Hey everyone, Aaron Stewart, Data Access Golf. Thanks for joining me today on this live slash podcast, which is how we handle every Monday, Data Review Monday. So thanks for joining me today. Sort of an amazing week for sure. But before we jump right into it, let's run the intro and get going. Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. Yeah, sort of a kind of a big deal, right? Kind of a big weekend. I don't know how many of you were a little disappointed in how things turned out, but I mean, Saturday night, right? It looked like it was going to be a bit of a barn burner, and we had Rory McIlroy and Brooks Koepka going head to head, and they were going to tear each other's throats out, and boy, it really didn't kind of go that way, did it? So, yeah, I was a little surprised by that. I guess not really surprised because we've seen, as of late, I don't know what's going on, but Rory McIlroy's been playing really good golf and trending really well. He's had a great season. You can't argue with that. As far as the numbers go, he's made a lot of money. He's done really well. Although we will see that only Brooks Koepka, as far as the top five, their per cut, their money made per cut, only Brooks Koepka's has gone up out of the top five that we've been looking at this year, which is interesting, but he's had an amazing year, right? The only player out there with 3 wins on the PGA Tour this year, so incredible play. A lot of discussion about Brooks and a lot of discussion on this show about Brooks Koepka. And I actually got a, you know what, I'm going to worry about that later. We've got a lot to cover here on this day of going over just the data of the big winner for Brooks Koepka. Talk about a guy who doesn't get a whole lot out of this particular win. Well, that's not necessarily true, right? He gets a lot out of it, but he goes over $30 million in prize money, and that does not include the $2 million bonus that he wrapped up by winning this golf tournament he will go into the FedEx Cup playoffs as number 1. So he's wrapped up the regular season Wyndham Rewards prize is a $10 million purse, $2 million to the one that finished at the top of the FedEx Cup numbers. And for a long time, it looked like it was going to be Matt Kuchar, and Brooks Koepka just kind of came in and ripped it away from him. Over the course of the last 2 weeks, he kind of knocked Matt out at the British Open, and then completely made it impossible for Matt to catch him after this WGC event. And then on top of that, this is not one that I was really paying attention to. If you look at his total money, kind of won by wrapping it up this week, yeah, it's the $2 million from the Wyndham's reward is a full season prize, obviously. But then also he picked up, and what is that? The AEA Cup or something like that. They choose a hole on every single course, and that hole, they take everybody's number for that particular risk reward hole, and the person who wins that picks up another $1 million. It looks like Brooks is going to win that one too, unless something goes dreadfully wrong. So literally at the end of this tournament, he picked up like $4.75 million because he wrapped it all up, and he's got one tournament left, and it doesn't look like he doesn't need to play in it. So it looks like he's pretty much wrapped that all up, which is amazing. So incredible win for Brooks for sure. There was also some chatter. I don't know if you heard this, but there was some chatter for sure right before the tournament started the last day, because Brooks showed up like 45 minutes before and just kind of, he says he's always warmed up. He just went out, and people were so shocked and amazed that he could go out and do this. And it took me back to the time, you remember the Ryder Cup when Rory McIlroy kind of had to be rushed to the course in a police car that was later auctioned off for some charity, whatever. And he came in and went out and won his match in the Ryder Cup easily, and everybody was kind of freaking out that Rory could just show up and go, that's how good he was. And yeah, so it was all a bunch of chatter and talk. But Brooks didn't seem to have any sort of problem with it. And then I got a meme from one of my cousins yesterday that talked about how Brooks Koepka said, yeah, I don't even like golf, so whatever. And that's actually a fascinating statement, which we will talk about in a podcast later this week, because it's something that Brooks has, probably unbeknownst to him, tapped into something that's really important to play good golf. And so we'll talk about that and how he's gone about doing that. So as you know, today's Data Monday, so we will jump in and kind of look at the stats from the week and how Brooks Koepka got it done. And we'll jump right in and do it now. Let me pull up my screen up there. There it is. And oh, no, I've got a picture-in-picture. So all the data is sort of up here. So if you see me looking back up and down, I've got a screen up here. That's what's going on there. I'm not trying to ignore anybody. I just want to stay focused on this. So a little information then on Brooks Koepka and his big win. So that's his third win in 2019. He's the first one to do that this year. Some history on Brooks Koepka. He's the first, he's a back-to-back winner of the PGA Championship and the U.S. Open, right? That's something that he's been able to do in his career. But this I thought was interesting. He is the first to hold back-to-back titles in two majors simultaneously, right? In all history, in all golf history, he's the first one to do that. He had the PGA Championship and the U.S. Open, right? Back-to-back and simultaneously, where they kind of were on top of one another, right? He went for that 3 in a row at the U.S. Open and wasn't able to get it done. But yeah, pretty fascinating. He won the PGA Championship, had a back-to-back there, and then he was the back-to-back champion of the U.S. Open and tried to go for the three-peat. So pretty interesting stuff. Fifth player to win a major and a WGC event in the same year. Tiger Woods, Ogilvy, and McIlroy are also, and Dustin Johnson, his good friend Dustin Johnson, are the only other 4 players to do that. Ogilvy probably being the one that's the most, one of these things is not like the others, kind of a situation there. But Koepka, Woods, McIlroy, and Johnson, that seems like a pretty good list. Obviously, you would expect Jack Nicklaus and a bunch of others to be on that, but the WGC wasn't going on then. So anyway, and then this was fascinating. Brooks, not known to be a super good putter, but he has been putting better lately, and he burned a lot of edges at the Open, right? So, but anyway, this week in the WGC, FedEx, St. Jude, he led the field in strokes gained putting for only the second time in his career. Okay, so that is pretty amazing, and it was by a long way. I mean, we'll look at that here in a minute. Played golf at Florida State, Seminole. I don't know if I knew that or not. That was new information for me. This I didn't know. He was the 2014 European Tour Rookie of the Year, and he actually played on the Challenge Tour over there and won 3 times to get his card for the year that he won the European Tour Rookie of the Year award. So that was pretty interesting. And then in 2014 at the U.S. Open, he finished 4th in that tournament. He actually played in his first U.S. Open in 2013, but he finished 4th in his second, and he earned his PGA Tour card by doing so for the 2014 and 2015 season. So that's Brooks Koepka, and that's how he came to be who he is on the PGA Tour at this time. There was his journey. So let's make the jump down to the next screen here. There we go. Okay, so what did this do for Brooks Koepka and his career? First and foremost, his ranking improvement, nada. He was already ranked number 1 in the world, so he's now ranked more number 1 in the world, so nothing really good there. FedEx Cup ranking, he was already number 1, and he is number 1. So because that was so boring, I decided to throw on there Collin Morikawa, who won the Barracuda Championship or Open. I can't even remember the name of it. So the Barracuda Invitational? Wow, I'm drawing a blank. I can't remember it. But anyway, he won the Barracuda. I should have just said that, right? And I would have looked far less stupid, but I did not. So his world ranking, he went from 172nd all the way up to 90th. So in the top 100 now. And then in the FedEx Cup ranking, because he wasn't a tour player on tour, didn't have a card, they did not have a ranking for him before now. But because he's won and will now have full status on the PGA Tour, they project that he will be at number 46 in the FedEx Cup. Quite amazing. So if he continues his fine play next week, we may see him all the way up to the Tour Championship in Atlanta. So pretty impressive. Definitely when you saw Collin and drawing a blank. When we saw Collin and Derek go at it head to head, and Derek came out with the victory, I mentioned back then that if you were going to have to choose between those two swings, which one would you choose? And I said I would take Collin Morikawa's swing any day of the week over Fox's, because Fox's is a disaster. I don't know how else to put it. His swing is so unorthodox, and will be a lot of time. You put a lot of stress on his body for a long time. Where Collin Morikawa is so fluid and in so many natural good positions that he's going to be able to play until he's 400 years old. Anyway, so really cool to see him kind of continue on with the good play and do quite well. And I would expect to see him at the Wyndham to see if he can't get that up a little bit. He obviously is in the playoffs now, but if he could have another high finish and guarantee a spot in the Tour Championship, then why wouldn't you? So that'll be, I haven't even looked at that. But so pretty interesting there as far as rankings go. How does that change for the world ranking points? I need to move myself out of here so people can see. Oh dear, go away. There we go. We'll go down there. So as far as the FedEx Cup season points go, there was no changes. So you've got Brooks Koepka, Rory McIlroy, Matt Kuchar, Xander Schauffele, Gary Woodland, Patrick Cantlay, Dustin Johnson, Paul Casey, Jon Rahm, and Justin Rose. There's your top 10. Ricky Fowler's down to 12th. Now, it'll be interesting to see who is part of the Wyndham to see if they can't improve their position a little bit. As far as the top 10, I always find it interesting when we got people. I know that the World Golf Rankings are over the course of 2 years, and you divide it by the number of events they play in. So it's always quite interesting. But you've got Bryson DeChambeau, who's played in 52 events compared to everybody else, which I thought was pretty impressive. You've got Jon Rahm at 51. But anyway, Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, who is 7th in the FedEx Cup. You've got Rory McIlroy, who's 2nd, Justin Rose, who's 10th. Tiger Woods is nowhere to be found in the FedEx Cup season points. He's not in the top 10. Francisco Molinari, also not in the top 10, but he is ranked 6th in the world. Jon Rahm, 9th, 6th in the world. Bryson DeChambeau, not in the top 10. Justin Thomas, not in the top 10. And Patrick Cantlay, not in, number 6 in the FedEx Cup point and 10th in the World Golf Rankings. So, and as we mentioned, Collin moved all the way up within the top 100 there. So impressive numbers. Now going back to then Brooks and what, this is the biggest change that I saw honestly in Brooks. He has been playing so well this year that I wanted to kind of see how the consistency number changed for him. And we talk about this every single week. We like to look at the players and see how they're doing. And we look over the course of their whole career, and we've created this, what I call a consistency rating. It's essentially the number of tournaments you've entered, the number of cuts you've made divided by the number of tournaments you've entered, and it gives you kind of a percentage. So, and we looked at this last week in a podcast for Brooks Koepka. He makes over 6% of his cuts for majors, and he's closer to like 80% for just regular season play. So if we average those all together, he is now up to 84% as far as his consistency number goes, which puts him obviously in the elite category. He has been there all year, and he joins McIlroy, Molinari, DJ, Mickelson, Rose, and Cantlay in that particular organization. Then you've got the solid players, the good players, and the players that would typically lose their card are those that consistently make 59% or less of the cuts on the PGA Tour. So again, Brooks Koepka, surprise, surprise, he's an elite player and moving up, right? He used to be at 80%, and now he's moved all the way up to 84% in this consistency number. So moving right along to what that means for the money. Actually, no, it's not the money. We want to look at the benchmark review. What am I doing? A little update on the app. It is being, hopefully we will have a quote on the app to get it finished up here pretty quickly. But the design's all done. I am still waiting to hear from Fred Shoemaker on his ideas for the app. But in the meantime, I'm going to go get it ready to go. And as soon as there's any comment from there, we'll we'll push it out. We'll get it ready to go for everybody. So obviously these benchmarks have been created based on PGA Tour stats and trying to give us an idea of where we should work on our game and where we are weakest. And so we like to look at how the individual played in the tournament that they just won, and then compare that to the number of their 2018 numbers for the year. So looking at that, I hope I'm not getting a flash there live, but hopefully everybody can see this okay. But so driving accuracy, Brooks Koepka averaged 66% for the tournament and averaged 57% for 2018. Our benchmark for driving accuracy for hitting the fairway is 55%. So Brooks fits very well in both of those in both his entire year percentage, and his tournament percentage obviously was better than his average percentage. It typically is. This one was interesting though. So in the tournament, he averaged 69% of the greens in regulation, and his 2018 average was 68%. Our benchmark for that is 65%. I actually thought that Brooks probably played a little bit better than that, but we'll see later on that his scrambling numbers were amazing, and that's how he was able to get this thing done. So sand saves for the tournament, he averaged up and down out of the sand 67% of the time. In 2018, he averaged 54% of the time. Our benchmark for up and down out of the sand is 45% of the time, and some of those that score less than 45% on tour, Tony Finau, Bubba Watson, and Gary Woodland, to name a few, our U.S. Open winner. Okay, strokes gained putting. This is where it gets insane for Brooks Koepka, and this is how he got it done. This is not typically how he gets his victories, but I think that you can kind of see that this meant a little bit more for Brooks. He understood that this meant that he went in, he was going to win the regular season FedEx Cup. He was going to go into the playoffs. I believe that he has a goal to win the FedEx Cup, which is what's driving this extra attention towards the end of the year and in an event that's a non-major event. Obviously, he picked up almost $5 million for his efforts by wrapping all those full season reward events as well. But his strokes gained putting for this particular tournament was 9.3 strokes. That's how much he picked up on the field for the entire week. That is unbelievable, especially when you look at his average for 2018, where he lost to the, actually, no, I don't think that he was negative. That shouldn't be negative. That should just be, it's not negative. It's just he gained on the field 0.168 strokes, but we have that, we believe that benchmark, not that we can measure our strokes gained, but the good putters pick up a stroke typically on the field for the entire tournament, and Brooks didn't. He basically was average to the field, so we have that marked in red. That would be something that we would say Brooks could work on his putting a little bit, and we'll see that a little bit later. But Brooks doesn't typically win a tournament with his putter like he did this particular tournament. Really amazing. 9.346 strokes gained putting is incredible. And then scrambling, this thing is incredible as well. So we talked about how his greens and regulations seem to be a little bit low. I mean, they're basically his season average from last year. But his scrambling number, 91% of the time he got up and down around the green for par. Not losing strokes there, folks. 9 out of 10 times up and down. That's crazy. His average for 2018 was 63%. Our benchmark for getting up and down is 55%. So Brooks in the green for both of those, but the 91% is just absolutely crazy. Amazing, really. Now, we don't typically measure our putts like this anymore for our benchmarks. We're really focused on the 5-footers. 5-footers and in. Talk about that a lot. We should be putting 80, 85, 90% of all of our putting time in 5-footers and in to take pressure off the rest of our game, our sand game, our around the green game, all of that. If we are just super good and focused on making everything within 5 feet, it will change our scores dramatically based on just data. That's just how it is. So Brooks Koepka, we'll go ahead and look at these because we have all year. Next year, I'm not going to look at these. I'm going to take this all out and just look at 5-footers. It'll speed up the show as well, which will be a good thing. So 20 to 25 footers, Brooks makes 10% of those in 2018. Our benchmark is 9%. 20 to 25%, and that's rounded up, so he's right at 9% typically. 15 to 20 footers, 20%. Brooks Koepka makes 20% of those. That's 70% is our benchmark, so he's above it there, but not by much. He's pretty close on all of our benchmarks. Brooks is one of those that would be considered a below average putter based on our benchmarks here. 10 to 15%, 31%. Our benchmark is 28%. From 5 feet, he makes 79% of his putts in 2019. Our benchmark is 80. So we would say that's definitely a place to work for sure. And then putts per round, 28.76. Our benchmark is 30 putts per round. Interestingly, boy, if you can make 91%, if you can get up 91% of the time up and down, boy, you're going to be very, very good. Okay, so what does this mean for the money? We like to do this, obviously. So the WGC FedEx paid out $1.745 million for the victory, and Brooks was able to get around in 264 strokes. So his per day average then, based on that $1.745 million, is $436,250, which equates to $87,250 per hour, assuming a 5-hour round. $6,610 per stroke, and that put him up over $30 million for his career, which is astounding. He has made 103 cuts, and so that raised his average almost $40,000 to $293,303 per cut. Now we have here, at one point during the year, I went through and took all the winners and created this money versus cut, essentially where we started doing these lives. I created this slide and we started ranking everybody, and these are only the winners, but how much money they make per cut. And so for the top 4, Tiger Woods, and so from it was like 7 or 8 weeks ago when I first did our first live and did this sort of presentation style. At that particular point, all of these players that I've got marked in red made more money per cut than they do now. So you've got Tiger Woods, Rory, Dustin Johnson, and Justin Thomas all now make less per cut some 6-7 weeks later than they did when we first put up the slide. Only Brooks Koepka has gone up, and he went up actually almost $40,000 per cut. So he's had quite the year to take up his money per cut average for their entire career by 40 grand per cut is pretty amazing. That puts him now in 4th place on this list, where he used to occupy 5th place below Justin Thomas. So I think that's incredible. To do that in 1 year, to up your per cut total by 40 grand in over the course of like 7 weeks is astounding. So Brooks Koepka is making a big ton of money right now and upping that average. Then we like to throw up here and kind of see what's changed. Literally the driving accuracy percentage, because those are things that we look at in our benchmarks. This hasn't changed. Everybody from 1 through 5 is the same. You've got Ryan Moore, Ches Reavie, Jim Furyk, Ryan Armour, and Henrik Stenson in the top 5. Greens in regulation percentage. Our leader, Corey Connors, still at almost 73%. So Corey had a big win this year, and he continues to hit a lot of greens in regulation, but hasn't really done very well with everything else. So year-to-date stat leaders for stand save percentage, I don't know how this is even possible here, but Tyrone Van Oswegen has raced up from 999 to 1st. Was his ranking. So he gets out of the sand 68.18% of the time. I guess that's because he has only been in one tournament. I have absolutely no idea how this came about. Francisco Molinari then got bumped down to 2nd place. Everybody got bumped down one because this Tyrone zoomed up to 1st place with maybe 1 or 2 tournaments. They should probably limit this space. You have to have a certain number of tournaments before they consider. I don't know if he snuck through or what happened there, but this seems kind of ridiculous. Anyway, leading in scrambling, Tommy Fleetwood with almost 67%. right? And so if we talk about Brooks Koepka and his 91%, we can see that that's insane. So Tommy Fleetwood leads the way with 67%. Close behind him, Patrick Cantlay gets up 66% of the time, as does Webb Simpson, Lucas Glover, and Aaron Baddeley all right there at that 66%. And finally, I left this slide in just because Brooks won. Sort of the review of our major winners this year. Tiger Woods obviously took the Masters. Brooks Koepka took the PGA, almost took the US Open, and almost took the British. Right there, finished second in both of those, which is pretty astounding for sure. So great win for Brooks Koepka, and thank you for joining me. Obviously, his stats were way better. The thing to really, I guess, remember most about what Brooks Koepka did was his putting was on fire, and he was trending that way. He burned a lot of edges the last couple weeks, and so everything started to dump for him this week, and he just absolutely lit it up on the greens, and that made the victory pretty easy, honestly. Had he putted like that at the British Open, he would have got that one too. So interesting stuff, a really great week. We will talk later this week about some really cool stuff about swings. I think we're going to get into Collin Morikawa's swing a little bit and maybe compare it to Derek Wolf's just for fun. And we'll have some interesting stuff to talk about there for sure. And then trying to get back into a lot of what Fred Shoemaker talked about. I'm going to break up that interview. It was 45 minutes. I'm going to break it up into smaller pieces, and we'll talk more specifically about, some of the wisdom that he shared with that is so important that we'll get further into that and some of the podcasts later this week. But thanks for joining me again for this live on Data Access Golf and for this 1 day delayed Data Monday. Forgive me, and thanks for joining me. Till next time, Aaron Stewart saying, better data always means better golf. Thanks.